on. We're basically today's Daf Yomi is Pei Gimel. Today's Daf Yomi is 83. We're going to start just the last two words of 82b. Amar Rav. So now we're on the top of 83a. Rav taught. We're going to push aside the Mishnah in support of in favor of the Brisa. Really, actually, we almost always follow a Mishnah before a Brisa. But Rav is saying that the Mishnah is not as strong as the Brisa. Why? Because what did the Mishnah tell us here? The Mishnah told us that in the situation of an androgynous, what's an androgynous? An androgynous is a person who is born with male genitalia and female genitalia. So under these circumstances, Rabbi Yossi had said in our Mishnah that he is an actual male and then therefore can feed his wife the truma. And so therefore Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah says this androgynous, this person who has male and female genitalia, is indeed a male. So comes along Rav and says, actually, no, this position of Rabbi Yossi is not as good as a Brisa. Meaning to say Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, that's not as authoritative tradition as the record we have of Rabbi Yossi's ruling from a Brisa. The Tanya, what did the Brisa say? That Rabbi Yossi says, androgynous birya b'fnei atzmahi. And androgynous is its own birya b'fnei atzmahu. That it, as androgynous, is its own creature. If this person has male and female genitalia, and such a person is not a man or a woman. And the sages, thank you, Dov there. And the sages did not determine whether or not he's a male or a female. Hold on one second. Okay, just want to also point out the schedule for the Daf Yomi for the next 3 days is because it's a little bit of a different schedule for our own family reasons. That we have the Daf Yomi, God willing, will meet 9 a.m. on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's today, tomorrow, and Tuesday, and also then at noon. It's for the next Daf on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, but will not meet any other times over the next 3 days. I hope people can adjust their schedule to continue to participate with his slahavos. So the Gemara says that the Chachamim did not determine whether the androgynous is a male or female, and so that's what Rav is. That's what Rav is saying, that Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah is saying that it's a male, this androgynous, but in the Brisa it says it's an uncertainty, and therefore it wouldn't be able to feed it truma. So the Gemara says, Adarabah, just the opposite. He says just the opposite. The Brisa is not as authoritative as our Mishnah. Meaning to say, why are you abandoning the Mishnah, which says that the androgynous is a male? Abandon the Brisa, which says the androgynous is neither. The Gemara says, I'll tell you why. May the Shavki Rabbi Yossi Bar Zuge, and the fact that Rabbi Yossi abandoned his partner his colleague, because in the Mishnah Rabbi Yossi gives his ruling as Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, and so therefore when he comes back to the Brisa and just teaches it by himself, and Rashi explains why that we favor the Brisa as the latter ruling, but when it comes back to the Brisa and teaches it himself, we see from here that indeed he has changed his mind, and he says that androgynous is not a male, but androgynous is neither male nor female. So the Gemara says, Shmuel argues with Rabbi Yossi, and Shmuel says, Shmuel says, I disagree. Shmuel says, the Brisa, which says an androgynous is not a man, I disagree with that. I agree. I think that the Mishnah is the more authoritative source. That the Mishnah says that androgynous is a total male. The Gemara says, Shmuel, Shmuel says the Brisa is not as authoritative as our Mishnah. Gemara says, Adarabah, according to Shmuel, it should be the opposite also. Gemara says just the opposite. Shmuel should say that the Brisa is more authoritative than the Mishnah. Why? Because in the Brisa, there's a single opinion. And Shmuel says whenever the Brisa just records one opinion, that's an indication that the Brisa thinks that that's the correct opinion. And so since this Brisa is just as one opinion, therefore the Brisa is the more authoritative source than the Mishnah. And Gemara says, yeah, when do we say that when the Brisa records only one opinion that the Brisa is more authoritative? Hani mili, when is that the case? Only only when the Mishnah was not, when the Brisa doesn't uproot the Mishnah. But when the Brisa uproots the Mishnah, we don't have this concern. And so therefore, since Shmuel says that the Brisa is the more authoritative source, because it's only one opinion. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Amrin Bey Rav Mishmei the Rav Halachok Rabbi Yossi Bandrogenes. So the Bey Rav, who we'll see later on, is Rav Huna, but that's going to be on Amma Beis. He says the laws like Rabbi Yossi about androgynous, and the way the Rashi explains this is like the Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah, that an androgynous is a total male. Uba Harkava, and the law is like Rabbi Yossi also by a Harkava. We'll see what Harkava is in a moment. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says Bekoshi Uva Kiddush, and Shmuel says when it comes to giving birth and also by Kiddush, by the sanctification. We'll see what that means in a moment. So the Gemara says, let's go through these statements. The Rav says the law is like Rabbi Yossi in two cases of androgynous and also of Harkava. What is that? So androgynous hada amrin, i.e. that the androgynous is a total male. Harkava, what's Harkava? The Tanan that we learned in the Mishnah, and this is the Mishnah in Shvius. Those of us who are doing the Mishnah Yomi every day with Benedict Roth at 5 p.m., everybody's welcome to join. I've been doing this, and what does the Mishnah say? Ein notin, ve'ein mavrichin, ve'ein markivin, erev Shvius pachas mishloshim yom. That you're not, even before the sabbatical year starts, 30 days prior to it, there are certain activities that you can't do. Why? So there's a different explanation. Some say it's just marasayin. You don't want it to look like that's a Rambam's thing. You just don't want it to look like you're working on sabbatical year. Some say it's because of the mitzvah of adding on to the shvius. Some say because it's maybe going to get completely planted on the sabbatical year, or you come to do it. But anyway, it states you're not allowed to plant, you're not allowed to graft. One is grafting by a vine, one is grafting by a tree. You're not allowed to do this on the eve of the sabbatical year, less than 30 days. And if you did it, if you planted it or grafted these trees less than 30 days prior, you need to uproot it. Rabbi Yehuda's position is Rabbi Yehuda says actually you could do it up to 3 days prior, because if the grafting doesn't take within 3 days, it's not going to take. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says you have them until 3 days or 4. And Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon Shtei Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say you have 2 weeks to before the sabbatical year where you could graft the tree, and after that you can't do it. And this is like a tangent, but according to one who says 30, you really need 30 plus 30. You need 30 plus 30 because you always need 30 days, and so now you need really 60. That's Rashi's explanation, but a lot of the Rishonim challenge that explanation of Rashi. And when Divrei Omer Shlosha Tzarach Shlosha V'Shloshim, the one who says you need 3 and 30. And when Divrei Omer Shtei Shabbosos Tzarach Shtei Shabbosos Shloshim, you need 30 days and 2 weeks. So according to the Bey Rav, that here we rule like Rabbi Yossi says you need 30 days, you need 2 weeks, or according to Rav Nachman, 30 days and 2 weeks. Fine. Now, what does Shmuel say? The law is like Rabbi Yossi in 2 cases, in the case of Koshi and the case of Kiddush. What is Koshi? So Koshi refers to when a woman is going into labor. So as a background, if a woman has blood 3 days in a row, when it's not part of her 7-day nidus cycle, she's going to be called a Zava Gedola, and she would have to bring a carbon at the end of those when she has after 7 clean days. But let's say she has the blood during childbirth. Then we're going to say, well, then it's not called the blood that makes her a zava. That's the blood that she has during giving birth. That's called dam leda, and dam leda is not going to make her considered to be a zava. It's a different type of blood from the rabbi's perspective. So koshi de tanan. So how can we know how long can her childbirth be in order for us to determine that it's the blood from the childbirth and not the blood from the zava? So the Gemara says, Kami Kishua. So how long is a labor? How long can a woman go into labor for? Anybody know? So look at what the Gemara says. How long can the labor be? Rabbi Meir says, Arba'im o chamishim yom. Rabbi Meir says 40 or 50 days. Rabbi Yehuda says, Daya Chadasha. Rabbi Yehuda says, there certainly is a way, because a woman, you think a woman goes straight into labor, but there's pre-labor, which can certainly be much longer than that, much longer. And women, we call it like some Braxton Hicks. But the point is, you go into labor, something could be attributed, a blood or a clotting could be attributed to the labor, even though the labor is very far removed from that. But Rabbi Yehuda says Daya Chadasha, which is a very strange position. What Rashi said, it's not strange. To me, it's very, let me just say it more respectfully, it's less intuitive. That Daya Chadasha, that the whole 9th month that she gives birth, anytime in that month, you could attribute it maybe to the labor, because we could say it's from labor. But the ironic thing is, it's the month of the Hebrew calendar where the 9th month of a pregnancy begins. So, why would we care? So it could either be 30 days or it could be 2 days, Rashi says. But why? Because we say Shipura Garam. When she hears a shofar being blasted on Rosh Chodesh, that's how she hears, that causes her to go into labor. And Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say, Ein Kisha Yoser Mishnei Shabbatos. They say labor is only 2 weeks, and that's what we attribute it to as well. We say the labor is only 2 weeks, and we can only attribute the blood to those 2 things, to those 2 weeks. Now, Kiddush, what's Kiddush? This refers to what Rashi says, a lashon of pentik dash, the prohibition of kloya kerem. That there's 5 types of kloyim, and one is the kloyim that you're not allowed to plant. You're not allowed to plant wheat. You're not allowed to plant with your grapes. You're not allowed to plant wheat. So if you plant wheat with the grapes, then it's going to be prohibited. So let's say somebody does the following. Let's say Reuven has his grapevine, and he's next door to Shimon, and Shimon is planting his wheat. And what does Reuven do? Reuven takes his grapevine and puts it over Shimon's wheat. So now, what? Yeah, well, this Gemara appears in Baba Kama and in Koyim. They say Baba Kama. What?
We saw it
in Baba Basra? Okay, fine. So the Gemara says, well, it's a very big sugya. You're going to say this is a very big sugya in Ezekiel, a very big sugya with damages, and you'll see why in a moment. Because it says the following: let's say somebody takes his grapevine and puts it on somebody else's crops. So now what you have done is you have turned it into koyim, and so therefore the one who does it has to pay for the koyim. Now, what this koya karam, you're not going to have any benefit from it. You're planting $1,000 worth of grain right there in this little area, and I come along and put my grapevines on top of it. So therefore, I've destroyed your grain. You can't use it anymore. That's what's called I've damaged it. And Rabbi Meir says I have to pay. Whereas Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon say, no, we're on the top of 83b. Ein adam oser davar she'eino shelo. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon say, no, a person cannot prohibit something that does not belong to him. Something that doesn't belong to him, you can't prohibit. Meaning to say that they say that since this is not my grain, meaning to say I'm the one with the grapevine, I can't put my grain on I can't make your grain prohibited by just putting my grapevine on it. When Tosha says everybody agrees that if I would drop my milk into your chicken, that would make it prohibited because that's physical, as Meir said. But otherwise, I can't prohibit something that's not yours. There's also, so therefore, that's the concept of ein adam oser davar she'eino shelo. I can't make something prohibited if it doesn't belong to me. There's also a concept here what's called indirect damages. Indirectly, I'm damaging your property. I'm not actually cutting it down. I'm changing the legal status. That's why it's probably maybe why Roy was discussing it in cheer, because there's a concept of grama de nizikin, indirect damages. Let's say you have a document that says that you own a piece of property, and all I did was rip up that document. I didn't destroy your property. I just limited your claim to that property. So what's my level of responsibility to pay you there? That's what's called grama de nizikin. Yes, Aaron.
It's milk ends. You just take it out of the fridge. Because he said it had to be your.
Yeah, no, but by the case of the milk and the chicken, the case of the milk and chicken, everybody says it doesn't matter. There, it's an objective reality. He's asking the question: what doesn't matter who owns the milk or the chicken? There, it's an objective reality. The milk is in the chicken, but this is but the kulayim is dependent upon intent, because kulayim is something that you have to intend to want it there in order for it to be kulayim. But it's an excellent question. So the Gemara says, so there we rule like Rabbi Yossi, who says, since it's not his grain, he can't prohibit it. So now the Gemara says, what does Shmuel say by androgynous? Does he rule like Rabbi Yossi, androgynous is a male? So the Gemara says, yeah, the Mishnah is authoritative, which means that androgynous is a total male. Harkava Mali, does he rule like Rabbi Yossi? Remember, Rabbi Yossi says 2 weeks by grafting. Amar Shmuel, Tashmad, Amar Shmuel, Rabbanan, Tani, Command, Amar Shlosho, Shlosho. No, he doesn't rule like Rabbi Yossi. He rules like the one who says 3 days and 3 days. Not, I think that was. He rules like Rabbi Yehuda. So like 3 days. So the Gemara says, Koshi Mali Amarav. What does Rav say in the case of childbirth? How long do we attribute the birth to? Amarav Teku. Rav says we don't have an answer. Kiddush Mali Amarav. What does Rav say by the case of the crops and the grapevine? So Amarav Yosef Tashman Amarafun Amarav Ein Halacha Rabbi Yossi. The law is not like Rabbi Yossi, i.e., the law is like Rabbi Meir. And if you stick to grapevine on somebody else's grain, you're going to be in total liability. So Abaye therefore asks the question. Says Abaye says to Rav Yosef, who brought Rav Huna's position, why are you relying on Rav Huna in the name of Rav? Smocha Has. Why don't you rely on the other position who says in the opposite of Rav, who says the Amar of Adam Rav Halacha Rabbi Yossi, who says that the law is like Rabbi Yossi when it comes to the kiddush of the grain on the crops. So the Gemara says, Amar Bei Rav, Manu Rav Huna, Amar Ein Halacha. He says, because I follow Bei Rav, who's Bei Rav, Rav Huna, and have a tradition. Rav Huna says the law is not like Rabbi Yossi, the law is like Rabbi Meir, that you can't prohibit somebody else's crops. Okay, so now we said in our mission that Rabbi Yehuda says, if you have a tumtum, what's a tumtum? A tumtum was a person whose genitalia were covered up, and then the genitalia became torn away, and you can now see them. V'nimtza zachar. And now we know that the tumtum is a male. He still does not do chalitza because he's a saris. He's not capable of having children, and so therefore he's not considered a man, and so therefore he does not do chalitza. Amar Rabbi Ami, my avilei Rabbi Yehuda with tumtum deberi. So he said, okay, what did Rabbi Ami do? It says Rabbi Ami, what did Rabbi Yehuda do for the tumtum of Beiri? So he explains, do svua abe kurse v'ikre v'oled sheva banin. Says, how can you say that a tumtum who tears is that he's not a man? But what about the case? What would Rabbi Yehuda do about this case? What would Rabbi Yehuda say about the tumtum of Beiri? There was a guy whose genitalia were covered up. They sat him on a chair. Presumably, this means they did surgery on him. They put him on a barber's chair. They took out the knives, cut away his membranes, and then look what happened. They revealed his genitalia. They knew what they were doing back then, and he gave birth to 7 children. So why was Rabbi Yehuda say he's not a man? He just had 7 children. He's not a saris. Where it says Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda he's not buying it. Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, go. I don't believe that those are his kids. He says, I don't buy it. He says, let's get the TMZ story on that one. Now, so Gemara says, tonight, Gemara says, then let's bring a different opinion from Rabbi Yehuda. This tonight, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, tumtum lo yachotz, shema yikara v'nimtzas rischama. A tumtum can never do chalitza. Why? Because we're worried that he might after what? Okay, chalitza is that very good question. Chalitza is if somebody's wife dies, somebody dies, a man dies, and his wife is left as a widow, and the man has no children. So then what happens is the surviving brother does yibum, but if he doesn't want to do yibum, the surviving brother does chalitza, where the wife removes the shoe and spits on the floor in front of him. So we said that a tumtum. So Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda is saying Rabbi Yehuda had said a sris can never do chalitza because even if he's exposed as a man, he's really not a man because this tumtum can never be a man. But here Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda says tumtum lo yachlatz, that the tumtum should not do chalitza. Shema yikara v'nimtzas rischama. Maybe his membrane will tear, and we'll see he's a man. We'll see he is a man. V'nimtza sris chama, and then we'll discover that this person is a sris chama, and the sris chama doesn't do chalitza at all. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda says that sris is not tumtum is not a certain sris. He's just an uncertain sris because maybe it won't be a sris chama. So the Gemara says, to call the mikra zachar? No, you think everybody whose skin tears away and then discovers genitalia is going to be found to be a male? No, this is what we're saying. Shema yikar v'nimtza nekeva. No, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is saying no. He can tumtum shenatu chalitza because maybe it's going to discover that that this person does chalitza was a woman. V'afilu nimtza zachar, and even if it's discovered to be a man, shema yimatzin sris chama. Maybe it's a man who's a sris, and so therefore, don't allow it. And so Gemara says, "My binaya." What's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda? So the difference is we have sol b'makom achem. The distinction between them is if there's another brother who can do chalitza or yibam. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who says he's a certain saris, then we say under those circumstances the chalitza is nothing because there's no connection, and so therefore the other brother could do yibum after the chalitza of the tumtum, and the other brother can marry the widow. Whereas according to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, who says no, maybe he's really a man, but we're not sure. Well, then if the tumtum goes ahead and does chalitza, then we would say under those circumstances that maybe he's not a sris, and then the other brother can't do yibum. Another issue is, let's say should we require them to do chalitza when there's no other brothers? Meaning, say according to Rabbi Yehuda, he's a certain sris. Don't even bother with the chalitza because there's no other brothers. But according to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, you wouldn't require a chalitza for stringency because maybe it's a male. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Rabbi Abba Achua. So they say the following. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Androgenes Chayav of Skila Mishtei Mekamas. Okay, so this is a little bit, it's awkward to say, but we're going to have to talk about it because this is our Gemara. So basically, the Gemara says that according to this position of Rabbi Yehuda Marav, that since the androgynous is a male, if another male has intercourse with this androgynous, then that's what's called homosexual intercourse and is prohibited by the Torah. But he says you're liable in both places. There's two ways that according how homosexual intercourse is prohibited through the rear. That if they have what's called anal intercourse, that is what the Torah, technically speaking, is the prohibition for liability. But let's say this person who has the genitalia of both a male and a female, let's say they have the intercourse not through anal intercourse, but through male-female intercourse. But this androgynous has female genitalia, but they're a male. So he says it doesn't matter. Even if they have male-female intercourse, he's still going to have liability, and he's going to be liable. So b'shtei makomos from both places. So Meisir Rabbi Lazar Amar androgynous chayav olav skila kabezachar. But what about this? The Brisa says that Rabbi Lazar says that you're liable only like a man. So Gemara says b'med v'amamur b'zachar shelo b'nekeva shelo poter. So the Gemara says, and doesn't it mean that it's only if you're liable through the male orifice, but not if you have intercourse in the female genitalia, then you're going to be exempt. So isn't this a dispute? Isn't this argue with Rav's position? So the Gemara says, no. No, Rav holds like Rav Simai, says you're liable in both places. My time at Rabbi Simai. What's the reason why Rabbi Simai says you're liable in both places? Amarav Bar Chamdua Asberli. He says Baram Dure explained to me that you're not allowed to sleep with a man with the sleepings of a woman. What is the male that has two sleepings that you're still going to be liable? Is androgynous. That's an androgynous, and you're liable in both places. Even though you have two places to orifice, means say you're only liable if you lie with this man through the male orifice. How do they know that there's a prohibition that a male intercourse is prohibited? So because if they're using that verse, it's only one verse. So how do you know? That's to teach us that you're only liable in the case of an androgynous through that way. What about a regular male? So it says me ve'es, the extra word. Let's say you're having an adulterous relationship with a woman and it's anal intercourse. How do you know that you're going to be liability for that as well? Because normally that's just the male intercourse. So they say mi v'isha. You learn out from the extra vav v'isha. So is that more? My keys are in the dining room. I'm going to see if that's it. So it says, Amar Rav Shizvi, Amar Rav Chisda, Lolakol, Amar Rabbi Elazar, androgynous Zachar Ma'al Yehu. It says, not for everything does Rav Chisda says, not for everything does Rabbi Elazar say androgynous is a Zachar Ma'al. Not for everything does Rabbi Elazar say that androgynous is a complete male. Because we're now going to talk about basically, if you're going to say this, that let's say a person wants to consecrate their animal, which is an androgynous, then you would say it would be completely sacred. And we know that that's not the case. And we'll pick this up. Oh, you pressed the button? So we know that that's not the case. Okay, we'll pick this up, God willing. The next time we'll do this is then